All right. Ready when you are.
I am ready. I'm going to get my home services mug out. I got water in this one. All
Here we
right,
go.
good to go.
All right. Five, four, three, two, one.
Hello, and welcome to Diversity Matters, the series where we celebrate every voice and every story. I'm Teresa Palacios Smith, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And today we have a special episode that dives into the world of relocation management and how diversity and inclusion are transforming this industry. Our show today is titled Inclusive Moves. And we're excited to bring you a panel discussion featuring some of the brightest leaders in the relocation management field. And for those who are not familiar with relocation management companies, or RMCs as they're called, they play a real crucial role in the seamless transition of employees across borders, both domestically and also globally. And they ensure that both the personal and professional aspects of any move are handled with care. And this group holds a real special place in my heart because anyone that knows me knows that this is where I came from. This is how Gino met me. I was part of the relocation company with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Division in Business Development before I transitioned into the role that I have today. So I'm really close to all of my RMCs and also all of our relocation directors across the country that really focus in this area of real estate. So I want to get started, and our panelists today bring a wealth of experience and share passion for fostering inclusive environments. So allow me to introduce them to you. So I'm excited to introduce you to first Dr. Trapper Pace, who is the Director of Global Engagement and Development at Altair Global. And Trapper is known for his innovative approach to global engagement and his commitment to building inclusive practices within the relocation sector and his organization. He comes from that background of HR. So I'm looking forward, Dr. Trapper, and I'm going to call you Trapper, to
Perfect.
learning more about your background and about the work y'all are doing at Altair. Gary Connerly. Gary is also a close friend, Director of Client Advisement at Home Services Relocation. Gary's expertise, his client is in advocacy for diversity, equity, and business relationships. And you have set a high standard in the industry for the background that you come and for the fact that you are also multilingual or bilingual, right? Hablas español, which I love, right, Gary? We're going to
Es
talk about where
realmente
that
un placer estar aquí contigo esta tarde y aunque no estamos juntos, te mando un abrazo,
Ay,
Teresa.
qué lindo, gracias, qué lindo, me encanta. And we'll learn a little bit about where that background came from, because I was surprised to hear about how you learned español también. All right, Mark Coolidge, Director of Global Supply Chain at Servo Worldwide Relocation and Moving. And Mark is going to bring a unique perspective on how the supply chain dynamics intersect with diversity, enhancing service quality and fostering that inclusive growth, which I love. So welcome to all of you for our Diversity Matters show. I'm excited to have you. And to kick off the conversation, I always want to know about your backgrounds of each of your companies and how they have a unique approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we want to hear your insights into your company's DEI strategies. And if I may also add a personal touch, what drives your own passion for DE&I? And Trapper, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, perfect. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. As Teresa said, I work at Altair Global, and yes, you can see my lower third there. If anybody knows how to deal with warmly, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn and help me take this off. I did graduate, so I'm no longer a doctoral student, but still can't figure out how to turn that off. So, yes, so the purpose we're here talking about DEI. At Altair Global, we actually include the letter B in there, so it's DEIB. We really feel that the belongingness piece is important. We also have a little bit of a shift in the organization. We lead with I, so really really focusing on that inclusion. Our philosophy is inclusion and diversity, and then we have equity and belongingness as well in there. One of the pieces why we lead with the I is, as a global organization, we know that the term diversity doesn't necessarily translate all around the world, right? And so through research and better understanding that, we know that there's surface level diversity and then deep level diversity. And so the surface level diversity is much of what the American construct of diversity is built upon. So, just looking at the panel today, we have 3 that have assisted eye devices so that we can see better, right? So some of those visible differences, whereas the deep level diversity is more focused on personality, cognitive style, you've got economic status, neurodivergence, some of those things that you necessarily can't see. And so we expand the word diversity to include both surface level diversity and deep level diversity. One of the ways that we do that is by using Clifton Strengths, which focuses on that connection back to the cognitive level of diversity, or even the VIA signature strengths, which focuses more on character and virtues and values. That's really that piece that sparks the self-awareness. And once you have that self-awareness, then you can be more aware of others. So that's kind of that piece. We also, we go by the platinum rule at Altair. Most are familiar with the golden rule, which states, treat others the way that you want to be treated. Well, we know that, Teresa, you might not want to be treated the same way that I want to be treated. And Mark, you might not want to be treated the same way that I want to be treated. So we frame it through the lens of DEIB and focus on the platinum rule, which calls us to build relationships with others. And the platinum rule states, treat others the way that they want to be treated. And so as we get to know others, we get to understand a little bit of that deep level diversity that we might not necessarily see at a surface level. I am excited to say that yesterday we added our annual ESG report. And so that focuses definitely on the S, a portion of the company that I help support. Great information in there. It combines our sustainable development goals, which we try to tie everything back to one of the UN Global Compact's sustainable development goals. So that's DEIB at Altair in a nutshell. I know that's a bit. It's one of my favorite things in life. That's actually what called me to have this lower third on the bottom. You can see my Clifton Strengths there at the bottom. But it's something that I feel that we're all unique. And when we recognize that uniqueness and focus on the kaleidoscope that we all build when we're together, you can do some really amazing things. I think sometimes that is a hindrance to us as human beings. The Gallup 2023 Global State of the Workplace report indicated that only 34% of workers feel that they're thriving. And so I think that as we focus on that inclusion and that belongingness piece, it brings us together and it calls us as organizations and stakeholder partners to help focus on that DEIB so that all can feel that they're included, that they belong, and that they can thrive. So
first of all, I love that philosophy. I think that's fabulous. And
thank
I
you.
like the DEIB, the belonging piece. We actually held a belonging conference a couple of years ago, which really, I thought, really encompassed what we are all about, even at home services. But I really appreciate the background and also the importance that, yes, in the I was just going to say, in the I, and really also that platinum role. I think that's fabulous. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Mark, how about you?
Well, I'd like to say I like the B, the belonging. That's really key for us as well. The way that I often quote this that our chief diversity officer talks about is the it's the inclusion is the invite someone to the party, and then the B is asking them to dance. And so I think that's really the key, that message that you mentioned. I won't go into a whole lot of details as far as kind of the philosophy piece of it, but we started our committee in 2020. It was actually right after the George Floyd incident, where our CEO's daughter, as an adult, said, what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, what can I do about it? She's like, well, no, what are you going to do about it? And literally the next day, we started the IDEA Committee, which is the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity Alliance. It has started with kind of more of an HR internal focus to then expand to an external piece, and that's where I come in place. I run our supplier diversity program, so the external facing thing. And we have then grown from, we started out with like 2 ERGs, and now we actually have 9 as of today. And I think that's the whole key, is the messaging, I don't want to say training, but it's almost like, like reconfiguring how you think and getting that out to as many people as possible. And then it's a matter of not just thinking about it and doing things, but actually, making it as part of your business, who you are as a core. So now today we like think about in everything, whether it's an RFP, client QBR, et cetera, the DEIB piece is always included in there. It's always something that we push forward, and a lot of our clients are really excited about this.
I think that's great, Gary. And one of the things that I think is really critical, which is one reason we're here today, is really to understand really how many, and I'm going to be honest with all of you, one of the things that I hear the most from our members and our franchisees is that it's very difficult to do business with all of you because you have your relationships, right? Trapper, that you talked about, right? Those relationships already set. Your brokers, you trust them for the delivery of services and goods, especially in the handling of that care for those employees, that sometimes it's hard for them to break in because they're not equitable in many cases with those larger relocation companies and I say relocation divisions or departments within our real estate company. So what I'm hoping to do today is to also extend that to create more of awareness so we can get more of our minority owned and women owned businesses involved with your networks. So thank you for that. And I love that you are covering both pieces and that you have ERGs and there's 9 of them. That's incredibly impressive. And I love that thought process because you don't know what, I love Sheryl Sandberg's commentary, but you don't know what you don't know, right? You can't change when you don't know, but once you know it, you can't help but change, right? Yeah. That's the perfect analogy. Once we know all this stuff, we can't help but change. All right, Gary, I'm going to lead off with you.
Thank you again, Teresa, for the invitation to be here. Home Services Relocation is part of the Home Services of America companies. There are approximately 40 operating companies that fall under that umbrella. Our CEO, Gino, he likes to talk to agents in the training that we have with agents about being a forever agent for someone, right? Being there for a client for whatever they need might be for the rest of, that relationship that they have. I joined Home Services almost 7 years ago, and I say humbly that I think I've found my forever home, if you will. And that's in part because of the culture that we have here. And so like all organizations, we have training regarding the biases that we have, which many are completely unconscious. And, you don't know what you don't know until you know. And yeah, I'll piggyback on once you know, then it becomes, okay, I'm aware of this now. How can I change the way that I behave or the way that I think or the way that I perceive the world? And it's very much a part of us as a company, being inclusive with all cultures, with, no matter how someone might identify. Me personally, to kind of answer maybe the question that came up earlier on, wow, how did he speak Spanish that way? When I was very young, my parents became missionaries. And at the age of 7, we moved to Lima, Peru. And I then spent the next 10 years, very formative years, growing up in South America, growing up and traveling all throughout South America, living in Lima. And even until today, in my 50s, I still identified, tengo un corazón peruano. I still have a heart of a Peruvian and very much a culture and a passion for all things that are Peruvian. And you might not necessarily know that if you just
I was shocked the first time you talked to me in Spanish. Like, what? Where did you get this Latino? How do you
Right.
speak Spanish
And,
so
and
well?
so and so maybe that translates into the idea of don't make assumptions.
Yes,
Let's
I
not
love
make
it.
assumptions.
That's perfectly beautifully said because it's so true. And we do have to give a shout out because leadership starts from the top when it comes to D&I. And there's no doubt that Gino Blafari, our leader, is really devoted to it and making sure that it is part of our culture every day. All right, let's move into supplier diversity. And Mark, and Gary, thank you so much for that answer. Is learning about that critical area because it is so important to understand that diverse businesses also enhance innovation and also service quality. So how does your company define that supplier diversity? And I'm going to go to this one for you, Mark, because I know this is your area, which I know is also very similar to the other two guests that are here. But what criteria do you use to select diverse suppliers in the relocation process?
Okay, so let's start with first kind of the definition of it. So the key is the 51% owned and controlled, and the controls is really the key thing. That's the piece that people think about. They think, okay, I'm a woman. I own this business. I'm married, and depending on the state you're in, that this is one of the many ways that we husbands mess things up. We cause a problem where suddenly that the company cannot be considered diverse owned. So the whole key is having that control piece and having documented pieces there. So when it comes then so it's the definition 51% owned by a woman-owned, minority, veteran, LGBTQ plus or other diverse status. That's pretty standard. It is different around the globe. If we're talking outside the U.S., it's not as strong or developed outside the U.S. as in the U.S. But in the U.S., outside the U.S., it may be defined in other ways. And there's a whole list of companies that actually or certification programs available out there, and we can share that after the call if you'd like. The key though is that I think one thing that's really interesting to note for suppliers that are diverse owned is there's the status of certified and non-certified. We track both. So if you are a diverse owned company, just tell us, let us know. We'll put it in the system. We'll report to our clients that information. But a growing number of clients are looking at dividing it out between the certified and non-certified. And the certification process is designed to ensure that things are being done right. The reality of things is it's a hurdle. It's a burden. It is not an easy process to become certified. I like to joke that it must have been developed by a white guy or something, because that's make it as difficult as possible to do it. But it is really important, and it can benefit the supplier greatly, because in a lot of cases our clients are only going to want to count that certification. So that's something, if you're ever thinking about, should I become certified, that's really a key factor. Now, as far as like how you work with us, how you become part of our network, et cetera, we have a formal sourcing process. We do weigh in not only certification or diversity owned status, but we also look at internal programs. And do you have any DE&I program? Are you doing training? What are you doing externally, et cetera? So that's all part of the factors. But I will tell you that, as mentioned, the certification does help.
Well, that's good to know. And for our audience members, tell me what certifications you're talking about. WBE, I mean, like which ones really make an impact that you're looking for when it comes to the minority? Because we really kind of want to talk about those just so that people know.
Yeah, so I think actually that's a great question, because again, the simple answer is the big names, the big brands.
Okay.
Whether it's the national brands or brand's probably a wrong term to use, but
the designations that are done by the government agency, Small Business Administration provides those identifications.
Correct.
And what we'll do is incorporate those in our information afterwards. So you'll find it on the Diversity Matters website. So I'll put those in so you can, and the links to where you can find the certification. Now, anyone else that wants to pipe in, my next question. I know that's really critical and that's really important, but here's my issue with that. And you mentioned it. It had to be not created by people that are diverse, because minority women, minorities that run real estate companies, typically not just they don't have a whole relocation department like my larger companies. I came from the best Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Georgia Properties. Kathy Conley, got to give her a shout out. Janet Malden and our team there. But at the same time, it's not fair to someone who's got to go out. I mean, you talked about training, internal training, all that stuff. That's really hard for someone who's running a company, who's a smaller organization, who might only have 20 people that are part of the team. They're actually working the business themselves. If they go out and sell, they also help. And to them, it's going to be hard for them to have those uh, internal training that a larger company might have. And also that it might be difficult because there's a lot of fees y'all require and a lot of training and a lot of, you got to attend my conference. So how are you really being equitable? Because I always talk about equity really being that plays a big part for those companies that it is hard for them to do that. And Mark, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I can start with it. That's exactly what we found. So what we found is that when we were looking at the spend and looking at when we kind of first started out, about 40% of our spend was non-certified. And we started to ask the question why, and that got to all the things that you just mentioned. One of the ways we're trying to fix that is one, telling everybody about that and saying this is a problem, this is a concern. We do have a certification program where we will walk a supplier through the process, help them get certified, end to end. We were started out as kind of pilot as a one-off, so we'd take one supplier and walk them all the way through it. And it takes months to do that.
Yes.
At our last conference we had with a lot of our brokers back in April, we started kind of a workshop idea. So now we want to say, okay, let's just have a session like this. We can go in, we can talk about it. We can't necessarily talk about every single specific that you may have. We can take that away and discuss those things. But really the key, these are the hurdles, these are the pieces you're gonna fail on when doing the certification. These are the opportunities that we can help you with. I think that might be a better way to move the needle a little bit faster.
Perfect. Anyone else want to join or pipe in? Altair?
I would just say, when it comes from, and this is kind of, Trapper, the HR guy lens, check with your state about small business educational funding. Being in Texas, that is one thing that you can get those grants that are free dollars to you if you have an organization that's under 100. And so being able to leverage some of those dollars that already go toward created programs for training that exist. So I would just like to call that out. And, there are some available state by state resources and funding for additional training.
Oh, that's great. Great information that we can access and provide to our audience members that are interested in being part of the process so that they can get those funds to do so. Anyone else? Gary, do you want to add anything to that?
I do have just one thought that I'll mention, and it's a situation that we had come up recently. Like Mark, like Trapper, Home Services Relocation, we have a formal process for vetting anyone who wants to be part of our supplier network. We refer to them as partners, to be frank with you.
Right.
And you asked one of the reasons, why is it so hard to get into that network? I think one of the reasons why is we work so closely with them. The nature of our business and what we do and the emotions that a family, that a transferee, that the transferee's family is going through and moving, it's so stressful. So the people that we work closely with in whatever service we're managing, we're just so tight, if you will, in terms of working together to ensure that family has a positive experience. But with all that said, this is the relocation business, and this might be good, it might be bad, but in relocation, things happen, right? Things can happen on a dime. And suddenly you find yourself as a relocation company having a very specific need in a very specific part of the company, of the country or of the world. And perhaps the supplier or the partner that you have is not the right choice for that solution. And we just had this happen in South Florida about a month ago. And it allowed me an opportunity to introduce a woman-owned temporary furnished apartment company in South Florida that I've known personally for many years, and that I knew was the perfect choice for providing a solution to this client's need. And that allowed me to, I'm going to be frank, just kind of subvert the whole process. You know what I mean?
And I love
And
that.
so my point there was I guess maybe I shouldn't call her out, but the woman who owns this company, I've known her for many years,
Yeah.
and we see each other at the annual ERC conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so just in that relationship, having developed a relationship with her over many, many years, gave me the comfort level of knowing she's going to provide the solution for our client. I'm comfortable in saying to our president that I'm recommending her and her company as the solution, and therefore we can make an exception, if you will, here and go kind of outside of our normal practices. And then the end result is adding another woman-owned business. So,
Yeah.
so almost kind of an also benefit, Teresa. You know what I mean? Right?
Yes, I love that. And I think that's really important that you did say, hey, I'm going to go outside of my traditional partners. And it is a partnership and you trust them and you know them. And, and I'm just going to give you an insight from the side that I've worked in. It's like also in our own businesses, we know the agents that really do a really great job for us in the real estate side and who we can trust. And sometimes it's hard for us to even open it up to somebody else that's new that we've never met because I'm not sure this is our partnership with, home services and Altair and Servo. We want to make sure that they have got all that in line and that they're good and they have a record, right? But when we go outside of that, it just is amazing how much opportunity there is. And you get to learn someone new that that you're like, oh my God, she's now my fave, right? So it's really important for us to open our eyes and our hearts to be able to, allow others in when sometimes it's hard for us because we do understand it is a partnership. But I like the idea that, importance of you've got to attend at least employee relocation, the Worldwide Employee Relocation Council meeting, right? And then also each of us have a local, company, and Metro Atlanta Relocation Council is in Atlanta,
Right.
that they should also visit. So I'm going to, promote
It's a
those
great
two
point, right? So
because that
SRC in
allows the network.
Orlando, or
Yeah.
all the ones that are Greater Washington,
Yes.
Merck in
Yes.
Minneapolis,
They're all phenomenal. In
BAM,
Texas, what's in Texas, Mark and Trapper?
North Texas.
Yeah, in
No.
TRP.
Okay, so those are organizations, since y'all are located there, that you can go and meet individuals. And again, it's about developing a relationship. You just can't go once. I mean, I've had that happen with people. Well, no, you got to develop the relationships and you also have to get to know that person well so that you can, feel like, okay, I'm going to trust that they're going to do a great job for me. So great advice. I really appreciate it. And the one other question before I go into business, broker partnerships is, metric wise, how do you, because Mark, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but, and again, I know that there are a lot of companies out there that really say, hey, we want you to use these, at least 25% of your business that you give to to a real estate company needs to, or your moving company needs to meet these qualifications or this criteria of being a minority owned or women owned or that those criteria. So how do you measure that success, Mark?
So simply it's a number to spend. So it's around spend, total spend. I mean, just last year we had $77 million in diverse owned spend. And that was an increase year over year. But for the clients, it is one of the tricky things I think that we see in the space is that you get the like requirements. I want 10%, 15%, 20% diversity on spend. Yet then, depending on the marketplace they're in, they may not have moves that there's just not suppliers that fit that need. Or you have maybe just not the volume there, or there's kind of other factors involved. That's always kind of the tricky part is like when you get a number, if it's just a number. But I think that's why the context is overall important. And again, for us, that's why for me, I really push both the certified and non-certified spend. So all the clients that we report to, they get a report that has the breakdown both by classification and by certified, non-certified, global, et cetera. And I think that's important for them to see as far as the opportunity. So it could be that they are using a supplier that's not certified, or they'll come to us and say, who's not on the list? So it's like, well, we have other supplier options that might fulfill your needs. But again, it's all about the numbers, and if you know your numbers, you kind of know how you can react and develop that client's needs.
Well, that spend makes sense when it comes to you're working with, let's say, a group move management, like a moving company or that. But explain to me how that translates to a real estate company, because I know they're paying referral fees to you. So I'm just a little confused on that one.
Well, it's on the spend to the client, so the commission could count as diverse owned spend.
Okay, perfect. I'm just getting clarity because I know that's going to come up with people that are watching our show as well.
So
anyone else
sell more big homes.
That's right. Trapper, well, again, we're looking at all different groups, right? First time home buyers, because you move everyone, right? Gary and Trapper, anyone else that wants to throw in or talk about your programs and how you determine that?
I would say it's similar, right? I mean, we all, I think, kind of have the same thing. It's your initial question and point, Teresa, was how do we make it more equitable, right? How do we, how do we open those doors? Do we have that ability to say, this is X number? Could we increase it to, plus 10% the next year? So what does that, how does that expand? So that it opens the door, and that we're not just necessarily having to focus on these particular percentages. And you know what? We could look at it and say, wow, you know what? They wanted 25. We actually had 45%.
I love it. You exceed
and that's
that number.
just right.
Yeah.
And you're doing that, and that's the natural course of business. So I think that, again, though, one thing that we know is a hurdle is the actual certification process.
Mhm.
So it's like, where do we start?
Yes.
In being able to make it more equitable? Is it in the percentages that are being created, or is it in the process? And it's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Which one do we invest in so that we can share that wealth and expand that beautiful kaleidoscope?
I think that's a great way to approach it. And of course, Gary, you told me how you added your, so that was kind of part of your question or answer. But here's the thing that I also want to just, again, my comment only. I'm commenting a lot because I love the relocation business, and that's where my heart is, right? So think about the following, as you look at opportunities in your own companies to provide maybe perhaps scholarships to help people that might not meet the criteria or threshold of what you're looking for, so that they can actually pursue, those opportunities. And you make it a random drawing, right? You don't make it where, oh, we're going to give it to this, hey, it's random. Here you apply and you get the opportunity to, to get a scholarship or grant with us. And then my last request is also, maybe when you're coming up with these policies or programs, you bring in minority-owned businesses to give you that feedback. Here's what you want, like, hey, let me tell you how hard it is for us to do this. And maybe think about this as you look at future, business or rules within your companies. See, that's my DE&I and also my relocation background coming into play. All right, so let's.
And now, Teresa, you're making me use my ideation, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so how do we create a 501c3 to help organizations get certified and go through and join? I mean, how do we
Yes.
How do we break the mold on this?
I love it.
How do we stop the cycle?
So let's talk about your internal teams and your companies. So what have you done within your companies to promote inclusivity? And also, how do you ensure that your broker network reflect these same inclusive values? And this comes from Janet Malden. I have to give her a shout out because she asked me that question. I asked that question to our group, and whoever wants to kick it off.
I'll take the
I'll go
lead.
ahead. Okay, you go, Trapper.
I would say, we have a global culture and communication platform that we use internally that's always on. So that's one way that we focus on inclusivity, is making sure that regardless of where you are within the world, in our organization, you have that ability to stay connected. That's one of the many beautiful things that came out of the pandemic, is the advances in technology and being able to stay connected, because that has really been a game changer. We're all visible on this webinar instead of just sitting in front of a Polycom unit in a conference room, not being able to see anything, because that's realistically where we were a few years ago, right? So this has been a game changer. Similar to Mark, we just added our ninth, we call them team member resource groups, similar to an ERG, BRG. We open it, me being the HR guy that also likes to be a little bit non-traditional in some senses, and appreciate the full sense of inclusion and belonging. We have a group called Hope, which is helping others peacefully exist, and it's more in lines with worldview and spirituality. And so that's something that is a bit different, but again, it's showing different levels of inclusion within the organization. I talked about our Clifton strengths, so that's probably one of our biggest ones, that we can actually put names to some of the differences. You can also, begin to modulate your behavior. You see that I have competition number 1. I have to bring awareness to that myself to modulate my behavior. But if somebody knows that I have competition, they can also say, hey, Trapper, let's check your competition. We can have those good conversations, and strengthen those relationships. We strive to create more cross-functional teams, and that's really about being intentional and getting diverse people together. I love using strengths grids, right? So we have the Clifton strength. I'm going to pair different people up together. Okay, there's 4 domains. I need some influencers. I need some relationship builders. Who's the executors? It took me forever to finally identify that I am not an executor. But when I did, it totally changed my professional game, right? I just know that I have to partner with those executors to be successful. And then I would say on the external side, it's really, it comes back to, aligning and creating those relationships, focusing on the platinum rule and treating them the way that they want to be treated. It's also engaging them in dialogue. I wouldn't say a conversation. It's more of let's hear and understand. How do we do that? Through experience management and our specific supplier partner experience program. That's an entire division that focuses specifically on what we can do to better increase those supplier partner relationships.
Fantastic. I love it. Anyone else? You can tell you got your doctorate because of all those phenomenal terminology that you are using.
I'm really just a
Yes.
nerd, Teresa.
I love it.
I'm surprised
Right?
Lerner's not in my top 5.
I just
love
want to piggyback on what Trapper said about the broker side, on the external side, and I think he touched on it. It's about that platinum rule. So it's the awareness of what your customers expect. I think there's this huge shift in the workforce, right? So there's less people like me who are decision makers, who are your customers, and so I think if they feel like there's a connection between them and the agent, there's a it's going to be a much better thing. It's not a broker, but we have a DSP that we work with that actually has developed this kind of AI virtual person, like an assistant that talks about a lot of the key moments in the move and kind of provides information. And that they've developed this technology where you can change the look and sound of the avatar as well. So if you want it to be, black with a British accent, right, like Idris Elba or something like that, they can do that. But I think if you think about from a kind of a connection standpoint from the customer and the company, whether it's an agent or, you know, an RMC or whatever, that I can relate to that, who I'm talking to. I can relate to who I'm getting information to. I think is a better channel than just like, okay, here's a form, here's something else that, you know, we're telling you what to do. And that's, I think, the future of where we could be going in this space.
Oh, and we're going to talk about the future in a minute, but I'm going to pivot over to Gary, because one thing that I know that y'all do every single month, and you know, that you really have a connection with all of the relocation directors within all the companies that you operate and that are part of your partnerships, as you said. And I think that really kind of helps, you know, with the understanding of what you're expecting from those individuals that are representing you, right? When you align an employee that's moving into the different markets, that either externally or outside or domestically. Am I right? Is there anything else that, because I know that for a fact that that's something that y'all do every single month.
Again, one of the reasons why this is my forever home. Um, the relocation directors that we interface with, not just in a monthly meeting, but I might talk to them at any point in time during the day. They might, you know, text me. I text them back. They've reached out. I literally had them reach out and say, "I heard you had back surgery. I'm thinking about you," and just the depth of that kind of a personal relationship. Okay, and now add to that, and this is, I really wanted us to talk about this during this webinar. Um, the fastest growing part of our business are international assignments. And diversity is a strength. When we have someone who's coming from France inbound into the United States, number one, I'm very proud that we have international assignment consultants here that work for Home Services Relocation who speak French as their first language. So let's just start from there, right? I mean, it just puts a family at ease that there's no language barrier. And then those same consultants, they've been through an international assignment. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but like I have. So in other words, you've kind of been in the shoes of someone, you know what it's like to go to another country, another culture, another language, and to feel like you're kind of you know, that first couple of months are truly fish out of water, so to speak. So you need the help from someone who can kind of ground you in, these are the things to expect. And these are perhaps some cultural differences to be aware of. And now I'm going to extend that to relocation directors at the brokers that we are partners with, or that are part of our supplier network. We will communicate to them any specific backgrounds or cultural situations that the transferee and the transferee's family might have, knowing that the relocation director is then going to do their best to partner them with an agent who can, in a similar way, relate on a certain level, right? So Intero is a company that we lean on for any of our transferees that we're moving to and from Silicon Valley. And having traveled there many times and met with them in person, I've met many of their agents that speak Mandarin as their primary language. And so now just think about that as the basis of, that's fantastic.
Yes.
just start from there.
Yes.
Right?
Having
that we
that
have
language.
A transferee who's coming in from Asia Pacific and who out of the gate can speak with someone in their native language, and just that sense of ease that what is a very stressful time is perhaps just a little bit less stressful.
Yeah.
Right. So this brings me back to, diversity is a must in this business.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, especially in the roles that all of you play. And I think it's really important to also state that you do it within that confine, because the U.S. and my role, it's all about fair housing, right? Making sure that we still abide by the fair housing rules that are set in the U.S., because it's different in every country that you touch. But still, a language is a need. That's a specific requirement that's going to make someone with the biggest purchase or the biggest event that they may have, as far as stress wise in their lives, to have someone that can communicate in the language that they're most comfortable with. So again, thank you for that. I think this is phenomenal. And we're almost getting out of time. I could spend hours with y'all. So I'm going to ask you a big one right now, because we have gone through the biggest changes in the real estate industry particularly those involving the National Association of Realtor changes that happened on Saturday 2 weekends ago, right?
Mhm.
Right.
The infamous August 17th,
Yes,
right?
August 17th day. So,
It's
and
all
our,
it's all in
yes,
our brains, right?
yes. So RMCs are paying y'all are being affected as well, because this is a domino effect in our industry. And a lot of times people don't realize that the changes that are made in one side are dominoes to others. So how are you adapting your strategies to ensure that you are protecting all parties? And I'm talking about buyer agency protection and maintaining compliance and also success in that process as well. And I'll start with Trapper first.
I would say that it's an ever evolving thing, right? Uh, we've had various things from day to day, week to week, month to month.
State to
One
state.
one of right, so yeah, then state to state. Well, one of the things that I think we obviously Kathy Couture here at Altair has done a tremendous job in working with WERC, hosted and participated on several panels around different topics. She's the guru on this, so I will not do her justice in this. But I think one of the biggest things is really, proactively educating our customers on the value of our broker partners, right? That's the biggest thing. And then working side by side with our broker network to ensure that our customers receive the exceptional care while being financially responsible to our clients. And so those things I think are probably the biggest changes. I think also continuing the conversation, helping, and the education piece is probably the most important.
I think that's really critical, especially because your business does bring in so much in many of the companies, right? It's a huge part of their business as well. Mark, how about you?
Well, I want to mirror what Trapper said. I think that communication is important, whether it's with our brokers, whether it's internally with the operations team, to our clients and to the customers. That's all critical. And I'm not the expert on that, and probably I'll defer again to, I'll do like Trevor and punt to two of my colleagues. So Debbie Barkley would be the one to talk to for that. But I think I want to bring up a really important point about this in context of this whole call, is the diversity aspect of it. So if there is one of the kind of, well, what's going to happen statements that gets thrown out there is that we may see a reduction in the small firms in the broker space, so in the real estate space, that the smaller companies may not have the wherewithal to adjust to the changes with what's going on. So the thing that I'll use the word concern, and it's concerned about is this going to impact diverse-owned suppliers? Because if there's more small businesses that are minority or women-owned business or veteran-owned businesses, are they going to, and we talked about this at the beginning, the training, they don't have the capabilities to do the training because they're too small. They don't know what to do. So in 3 years, are we going to see us going backwards in this space? And I think that's something I think we need to kind of monitor, be aware of.
I would agree. I mean, you got to look at that, because obviously it's the ruling. We want to protect small companies, small businesses, women-owned, minority-owned businesses. So it's really important for us. And Gary, I'm gonna let you finish up with what y'all are doing, or how are you handling as well? And then I'm gonna do one comment.
Well, I have my notes here next to me, and my notes say education and communication. So they've stolen my thunder, but
Yes.
yes, of
Yes.
course, we're
At
all
least
doing our
there's
best.
consensus.
That's
Yeah,
right.
We're
And
doing
I think you're doing your part, right?
our
And
best
making
to
sure.
stay up to
Yeah.
date on, what is the latest. I'll emphasize that we've been trying to not get into the realm of hypotheticals, because that just leads to so many tangents of what ifs, right? So let's not
Yeah.
worry too much about what ifs. Let's just focus on kind of, what is the situation today? But we are having conversations with clients about the impact this could have on their relocation policies, and the impact this could have on, historically, a company providing assistance to an employee who is selling a home, and assistance to an employee who is buying a home, and how that might change. And I don't want to speculate, because then I would be back into hypotheticals on on the what ifs, what if this and that, and we don't go there. But I think we all recognize the impact that this could have, and not only to our suppliers, but I'll say I'm also concerned about the impact to first-time home buyers. And I
Yes.
think there hasn't been enough discussion around the unintended consequences of everything that occurred last year, the NAR settlements, and what that might mean for someone who is looking to purchase a home for the first time and perhaps could struggle to do so.
Well, first of all, I want to give kudos to your industry, to relocation, because one of the things that I've learned from working 25 plus years in this field is that you do adapt, and that the companies that you represent, you well educate and let them know, look, this is what is customary and normal today. This may have been different, you know, like when in 2008 when everything fell and we no longer had equity in
Oh,
homes and
don't
people
bring
were
that up.
upside down. Right. You adapt, you adjusted, and you made the changes, and and you educated the companies you represent in that change so that they would this is a different world right now. This is what we got to do to help our employees. You also put together programs that now pay for rental assistance that used to not exist, because you realize that your agents out there really needed to get compensated. Nobody works
Mm-hmm.
for free. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and we got to represent those buyers that are first time home buyers that might be minority, which is the largest scope, especially in the US, that will come as first time buyers now and to 2050. Right now, 50% of them are minority. So I love that you've always adapted, you've always educated, and you continue to do so. And so that's my, my kudos to all of you, because letting them know this is the changes. We need to adapt our relocation policies. We need to take this into consideration so we all are represented when when your employees are moving to and from different cities or globally. All right, here's my next question. I know that technology, AI, all that's changed our relo. You even mentioned it, Mark. How is that? What do you look at the future of relocation? You know, what do you see? And Gary, I'll start with you.
If you ask me about the future of relocation, I would echo the panel, which included your leader at Altair at ERC last year. And it would be that I believe relocation companies are going to have to adapt how they do business, and that as a result, we may move into scenarios where we charge fees or higher fees, if you will, to our clients. I think that is something that I'm seeing more and more, and it might be just necessary for the relocation industry. I'm not going to name any names, but we had a relocation company that went out of business earlier this year, and I knew people that worked there, and I'm very sorry and sad to see that happen. So my point is, I think we as relocation companies are perhaps at a point of reevaluating even how we operate. Right?
Anyone else that wants to?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think that Gary had made a good point about the monitoring everybody's status and kind of their health. We've seen this in the supplier space, especially in the temp living space, where there is a lot of companies struggling right now. Overseas, I think in the last 2 weeks, I've heard of companies in Europe that all of a sudden they're bankrupt. So it is a concern. It is something we need people to start moving again. I do want to again take it back to the main overall topic about the diversity piece. I do want to say though, I think some people talk about this is a fad. This is something that was just a trend, the whole diversity thing. This is definitely not the case. I mean, we went from reporting 19 clients 5 years ago on diversity spend to 74 as of last quarter, and that's grown about a dozen in the last year. So it's I think the difference is for a lot of our corporate clients, it's not necessarily, it's gone from kind of like the hot topic to now this is just expected. This is just BAU. And I think that's something we're going to see going forward. I think, again, as I talked about the generational change, I think, if I can think of my kids, DEI and B is kind of like, that's just normal. That's just kind of there. It's like they don't talk about it because it's expected. And I think that's what we're going to see as well with the shift in the transferring employee.
I couldn't agree with you more. And they want to do business with companies and work for companies that have that as a mindset.
Exactly.
Trapper, anything else?
I would say one thing that I'm very hopeful for is policy evolution through the DEIB lens, right? I mean, you can't just say that it's you can't use the same policies that you've used for years and years. As this changes, right? Those are some of those big key foundational things that also have to change. It creates that inclusion. It creates the equity and this crazy thing called relocation. So it's important to recognize that, and I think evolve that as well in the transformation.
Perfect way to end that. I love it. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, let's have a little fun. So I always love to hear what's the most unusual or unexpected request that you've had to fulfill during a relocation. And we only have a minute for each of you to tell me. So I'm going to start with you, Trapper. Go back to you first.
Okay. I would say it's generally animal related.
You stole
Right?
mine.
I mean, so now it's
It's always animal related.
Which animal? So, a little miniature horse about the size of a dog, and I want to go visit it. Like I want to see that little horse that could, fit in a purse or a duffel bag and take it around. So, yeah.
That's an unusual one. Gary, how about you?
I had an animal story, but I'll pivot because that's what we do in the industry, right? So we had a transferee who was an engineer, and his pastime was he rebuilt train engines. And if you know anything about the cost of moving, it's based on weight.
Yes.
So, okay, let's have a conversation around the fact that this transferee that the company wants to relocate has a garage full of train engines and just how much that's going to cost.
Was that the most expensive move you've had to do?
That might not have been the most expensive move I've ever seen, but that was certainly one that was very unique. And I'll just kind of,
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mark?
Well, a million stories, but I'll use the one that I just recently heard about. Somebody asked to move the airship, a trampoline, to Brazil.
Oh.
And so, yeah, apparently we bounced the idea off the client. They flipped. I'll leave it at that.
I love that. I love it. Again, it's a fun industry because it's about inclusivity and also about people, right? And I want to thank you all so much, for your valuable insights and for sharing your experiences with us today and to really talk about what your companies are doing. It's clear that that's not just a buzzword, but you are creating an integral environment and a more dynamic, supportive relocation experience for all of those that you serve. For our listeners, thank you so much for watching and joining us today. And we hope that you found the discussion that provided a deeper understanding of how D&I is making a real impact in the world of relocation. I certainly did. So remember to join us for our next episode, which is going to air right here on September 25th. And check out any of the past episodes, including on this one, which will be archived on diversitymatterseries.com. And our next Women Who Lead, we have a great Women Who Lead show that also airs. It's going to be on September 11th, and we're going to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with Leading Latinas. So that's going to be a great show as well. Gary, your Spanish would come in very handy
watching that.
on that one. And so I really want to, again, thank you all. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you on this 1 hour. And for all of you, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep celebrating diversity because diversity truly matters. Bye-bye, everyone.